And we're live.
We are.
It is extremely sudden. There's no way to gracefully transition from the graphics into this. So, good morning, everyone. Good
Good
morning,
morning.
Shannon. Still morning where you are, right?
It's
Still
morning.
morning.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Isn't that what we used to say? Or
Good
well,
morning,
not
good afternoon, good evening. Happy time zone, everyone.
happy time zone. Happy time zone.
It's,
Yes, indeed.
I'm telling you, time zones are fake. Like, like trying to calculate in time zones, it's always messy. We
I
have
know.
on
I
Discord,
messed it
we
up.
have a tool. We have a bot that actually calculates the time every time we post something that has time in there, which is great because people can actually see when things are happening. So how you been, Shannon?
I've been good. How have you been?
You've been traveling. I've been traveling.
Have
It's
been traveling. I have been traveling. Yeah, I think this is one of the first times we've been able to do a stream together since I think before the new year.
since
So happy New
before the
Year.
new year. Yeah.
Good.
Are we
But
still allowed
here
to
we are.
say that? Like
I
Happy New
think
Year?
so. I think so. January is kind of a long month. So
It is. Yeah, man. Still January, right? Somebody said, I saw on TikTok, somebody said, in case you didn't know, you've been working from home for 749 days. It's
that's
like,
kind of depressing. Yeah, that's not a fun reality.
it is not. But at the same time, we make the best of it, right?
Yeah,
And when we can
exactly.
travel, we travel. We have time is moving very fast on the Microsoft Developer channel. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us this morning. And we don't have anyone on our channel. Well, we do have people, but they're not chatting. Sorry. I should say that. So if you are watching us on the 45 show, we're always streaming there. And then we're also co-stream on the Microsoft Developer channel because we know some of our friends are there. So any news? Any news for us, Shannon? Anything?
I don't know. I think we're just sort of getting started with the new year, right?
We are,
I
yeah.
can't think of anything major that popped up in the last couple of weeks here to talk about.
Uh, Conditional access evaluation. Sorry, continuous access evaluation
Oh
went
yeah, yes,
GA.
that's right.
Yes.
Wait. Was it? See
CAA,
again. It's
CAE, continuous access evaluation, is
yep.
now G. But I will only be excited once I hear that it is available for third-party developers. Because right now it is available for enterprise scale solution like Teams and Office and what have you. So if I ever get fired, then I know that I won't have access to my things instantly. But what about all the other apps I wrote that have access to
Right,
things like Graph and whatever? So
right.
yeah, so that was exciting news. And I think we're still rolling. I mean, we have exciting news ourselves. We have a hackathon coming next week, right?
We do a hackathon. We've got another stream
Got another
where
stream.
I don't know if Chris is going to set it up or if I'm going to set it up. We'll set up verifiable credentials
Well,
next week.
I might have to go through the process because you've already done it, so you can educate me.
I'll or coach you,
And your
educate coach,
and your
right?
blog went out yesterday, right? So
My
we have a
blog went
blog
out.
from you.
Yep.
I need to add the link there. Let's add the link in the chat. That shows exactly some of the gotchas when you try to set up the verifiable credential decentralized identity, what you need to look for, and where you
Yes.
can get caught. Like permissions
Right.
are not perfect there. I think we're still working on the documentation, and we have Matthijs that we can blame on the stream soon. Like, why is the documentation not up to date, and I had to write a blog post? Sorry,
Well, and
Matthijs.
and I think for me, I went the route of let's over permission the storage account, right? Or let's
Yes.
over permission the environment, and that's not what works for the service. And so that was my own boo boo, so to speak. So that's why I wanted to document it and give folks something because I think that's the natural inclination, right? Didn't work.
Yes.
Let's over
Yes.
permission, and
Also,
then we'll just
always.
remove the permissions, right? And then it's not going to work for the service. So
And yeah, like yesterday I was talking to another PM. We're looking at one of the Azure demos. Look, not Azure demo. It was like a startup. Like how do you get started with managed identity and
sure,
.NET? And it turned out that you had to create a service principal for the demo, for the sample. But that service principal was only assigned access to the data storage, the storage account. But what we realized that the demo was also setting up a resource group. So the first thing
oh
that the code was trying to do was create a resource group where the storage account would reside. So it had to have contributor permissions. I was like, it's a catch 22, right? Which one comes first, the egg or the chicken? Do we
yeah,
create an account that is over provisioned, or do we let somebody else create that and then you just run the sample? We decided
yeah.
to go with the easy thing. So let's bring our esteemed guest. We had
Yes,
him
let's do it.
last week
Let's
on
do
the
it.
show. Morning, Matthias.
Hey, happy March 700, 2020.
Groundhog Day.
God, it's like these. Like I've been in the U.S. for 3 years, but I can only count 1 year because everything else has been me being inside the house. So I might as well be in New Zealand. Makes no difference.
That's
You
true.
guys talk about traveling, and here I am, like sitting as a hermit in my home. But I'm fortunate, I'm healthy, and we have fun at work, and so can't complain. I did pick up garbage today, so after a few weeks, yay!
I know that everybody's garbage is sitting outside because nobody has picked them up and it's just stacking up. They're
Was
piling
it was
up.
it bad weather in Seattle?
It started with bad weather, and then I think a strike and a personnel shortage
Yeah.
because of COVID. So it all
Wow.
stacked up, literally.
Wow. So it felt more like New York during trash day, right?
Yeah, it's okay. Look, if that's the problems we actually have, then I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah,
So can't
exactly.
complain.
True.
Exactly.
True.
Exactly.
Now we have Code with Sean. We got Hector. We got Farnaju. Did I pronounce
Farhadsu? Farhadsu?
Farhadsu. Sorry, I am awful with reading names. And then we have Indigenous Navi from the UK. Hello, everyone. Today we're looking at API stuff. So last week we did the intro with Matthijs and Rohit that were here to talk to us about decentralized identities and why you should care. And today we're going to do the fun stuff. We're going to look at APIs and how things actually work. Yeah, the 45 show is back. We're never gone. We're just taking a small hiatus to come back with more appetite to serve you guys. And
Yeah.
MV Dev says JavaScript put the end to the chicken and egg debacle. Did it though?
I feel like that should be a tweet on Twitter.
That could be a meme, actually.
Also,
I'm
That's a
not
could
nice
be a
sure if
feature.
I understand that one honestly. So please feel free to explain this this dumb developer because I have no clue what you mean by that one.
Could it be because JavaScript runs everywhere and
Runs
I don't
everywhere.
know. Yeah, we need some
that would be, yeah, I think that would be the way I would take it. It I don't know.
It makes
runs
me pull my
everywhere.
hair out. So
We're all done here, so please explain. Yes. So what are you gonna show us, Matthias? What are we gonna talk about?
all right. So let's take one step back and
Yes.
let me show a small picture and then we can like look back to the basic. Like what were we talking
Yes.
about again before I switch over to code?
To
Let
code.
me share
Yeah.
a screen. I got three of them. No white screen. I
And
was
while
told.
Matthias is trying to load his screen, we
There
have a QR code on your screen. So I need to what? It's very hard. Yeah, there you go. This QR code. Make sure you scan this QR code because this will get you your verifiable credential for watching the stream.
Yes.
This is actually using one of the apps that we'll probably look at today and how we put together. But yeah, I can't.
Yeah, make sure that
come
you,
on.
yeah, it's opposite. Make sure that you get it and then verify it. So you
And
issue
verify
it
it.
and you verify it. That's the key. We want both.
It's a two-step process. No, we don't want both. We want you to experience both and see why
Oh,
it's
sorry.
important. But many applications will not do both. There's a very good scenario that
true.
you might just issuing credentials that people can use, and then somewhere else you might be able to verify that.
Oh man, the chat cracks me up.
Or is it?
Code with Sean just gave you he just basically made fun of you.
Thank you, Code with Sean. I will remember
Yes,
that the next time that I come to
yes.
your user group. It's okay. I'll be upside down. I will rotate all my screens so you'll have fun with that. How about that?
Too bad I can't chat because I can add some of the stuff to that list. But okay, if you can switch to the PowerPoint.
I can switch the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Oh, let me do this full screen.
This is also
slideshow.
extremely. What is the resolution on your screen?
I have no clue.
You might want to change it to 1920 by 1080.
It just uses more pixels for the same picture, right? So this should be visible for folks.
It is. It's a little bit grainy, but it's fine.
So taking a step back, we talked about last week, right? Is that the decentralized part of the solution and the architecture is where I got Woodgroove on the left who can issue verifiable credentials, And what they do is in that Verifiable Credential is a DID. I'm the issuer. You see this DID, example employer. And you can prove ownership of that DID by and the corresponding private key by signing messages. The only way for me to be able to verify those kind of messages is by having access to a public key. That's what we typically use in a private public key scenario. Like I sign something with a private key, somebody else can validate that signature with a public key.
Yeah.
That's also the challenge with public-private key scenarios. Typically, like, I don't know if you've used PGP mail in the past, and how the heck do you get to this public key of people? So as part of the solution, we have a resolver, which is called IAN. And IAN helps you to resolve a DID to a DID document. And inside of the DID document, among other things, is a public key. So what happens if Woodgroove issues a verifiable credential to a certain user, and the user has a digital wallet, which is in our case Authenticator, and we're going to show them a few times. So the subject is the user, and there's a signature of this issuer. If I present this verifiable credential to any other party, in this case it's Vericam, Vericam can validate the signature of the issuer by retrieving that public key of that DID. And since the holder or subject also signs the verifiable credential, it will verify the signature by retrieving that public key from that distributed database as well, and make sure everything checks. There's another check as well, like for example, wait a minute, is the subject actually this user? And there's a signature match, so you cannot, like, I can't steal a verifiable credential for somebody else and like pretend I'm going to be Christos and present it. So there's a few checks we can do, but the basic here is that Woodgroove has a private key. It signs messages. Anybody else in the world can verify those messages by retrieving that public key. So this distributed public key infrastructure, in our case, is called IAN, since we are using DID IAN. Is a big distributed PKI solution, if you want to summarize it. Okay. So this is the basic of how verifiable credentials work.
Very nice. And then again, there's a little bit of complexity here, but the beauty of the way that decentralized identity works with Microsoft is that a lot of this work is taken away from you. You don't really have to do a lot. So once you set up your infrastructure, which we will be doing next week, me and Sandra will be setting up a brand new tenant to issue and verify credentials. Then all you have to do is actually consume the APIs.
Yep.
Yeah, since all this, like the communication between the issuer and the holder or the user or the wallet or the user agent, there's all these different terms, and the relying party is based on standards.
Yep.
Microsoft is actively participating in those standard organizations, but this is not a Microsoft concept, right? We had just happened to be implementing those standards coming up from either the Identity Foundation, like DAF, the Distributed Identity Foundation, W3C, there's a few others, and a bunch of these standards together makes this entire thing tick. So, for example, the way we communicate between the holder and the issuer and the relying party is based on OpenID Connect SIOP. The verifiable credential itself is a JSON Web Token based on a W3C standard. So that determines which claims you have to have, what the format is going to be, etc., etc. The resolver is a working implementation of IAN and as a standard as well. The user agent itself, the wallet, it's a moving standard, honestly, but we have a working implementation of the latest version of that standard. Okay. So it's all, we try to be as much standard-based as possible. Sometimes we are ahead of the standards. Sometimes the standards go ahead and we have to catch up. That's like, it's a new world, right? So we try to be a good citizen, and sometimes you can't wait. You do the implementation to learn as well, right? Standards has to be based on real-world implementations. Otherwise, it's going to be like, I don't know, fantasy La La Land in a working group, and it's not going to be based on any reality, and that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, standards are challenging as well, right? There's different opinions, there's different routes you can take, etc. So working with those standard bodies is also something we recommend our customers when they have a strong opinion on how things should be. Like, look, don't fight with us. If you want something changed, go put effort in those standard bodies. But again, to emphasize, what we are talking about, it's not a Microsoft thing. It's an implementation of those standards I'm just showing here on the screen.
Right.
And we can share a link later with all the standards we are actually actively contributing or using or interested in. We got a link tree for that one. I don't know if
Oh,
you
we have
have
a
the
link.
link. Otherwise
Look
I'll
at
pass.
you guys
That
with your
would
link
be
trees.
cool.
Oh, yeah,
You
I
didn't
know,
tell
right?
me that we have a link tree to promote. We definitely have the link to the architecture diagram. So if you want to look how the architecture has been put together for Microsoft's decentralized service, then you can use this link over here. And then we also have a white paper that explains how Microsoft approaches DID and verifiable credentials. These links will be available to you in the description below when we get into YouTube, which will be a few hours after the stream. So if you don't get a chance to watch it live with us now, you can definitely look at the links later on. And the samples and the demos that we'll be also showing will be available for you to go and play around with later on. And ideally, you can use these for the hackathon next week. Just to
Yes.
remind you, the hackathon is taking place on the 27th. It lasts 4 days, 27th to the 31st. We have the support team lined up to help you, our support team to help you out with any issues. There's going to be awesome swag. Even Microsoft employees can participate. We made it open to everyone, which is something that a lot of people have asked, like, can we participate? So everyone is welcome. We already have something like 130 participants. It's growing very quickly. So make sure to join us. And yeah, I mean, from today all the way to next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
It's a packed week with a lot of activities and stuff. So make sure there's some fun.
No sleep.
Link for the hackathon. Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you very much. I will put the link of the hackathon in the chat. Thank you, Bruce. So it's 4 to 5. So DID hackathon. And make sure to join our Discord. Don't forget our Discord, because this
that's
is
how
where
you'll
all the
interact.
action.
That's how you interact with the supportability teams throughout the weekend.
And us. You can also interact with
And
us and the
us,
community.
right.
So it's not just for the hackathon.
You can razz Christos about not knowing what direction to point.
Yeah, directionally challenged questions, please. I don't think I can take them, but I'm more than happy to help. Right. Thank you. Thank you for roasting me on Thursday morning.
I had to.
Hey, more than happy to do that.
It's all free, right? Thank you. So.
All right, so that was like where we like kind of left off and a bit more last week.
Yeah.
So let's just get out of this one.
And let me make your screen bigger so people can actually see. Oh, look at that. We got some code and we got Visual Studio.
Is this readable, or you want to zoom in more?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the people that are watching the stream, let us know if you can see the font, or if Matthijs should make it slightly bigger.
Let's see if anybody...
See, the challenge with Visual Studio, after 20 years of being out there, is that you can only change the size of the code editor.
That's why
you
VS
cannot
Code
change.
is so nice, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
if you want
mobile's
to show the
gonna be challenging,
structure...
like 1-inch screen. Okay, I'll just do a lot of talking, as if I won't do that.
Code with Sean says he can see it fine, but he's not on mobile. Thank you, Code. Yes, thank you, Sean. And then I code in X says I can read it fine. So thank you very much for the feedback.
We're good. We're good.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Right.
Let's go.
So what I did here, and you will share a link to the samples. I just run a sample. I'll show how it works. Then we can dive into the API and how the sample works. I think that would work, right? And I know you guys are going to ask me a bunch of questions and our comments and wondering why we did certain things. Just running the sample. Let me find a browser window somewhere, which I have not used yet. I got a bunch of stuff ready to go.
Are you saying you haven't used the browser in a while?
Yeah, I know. This internet thing, I don't know how it's going to take off.
I know. It's a fab. It's still a fab, man.
By the way, I do like the fact that the sample has the cat. That was probably my favorite part.
Ninja cat. It's the Ninja cat, right?
The Ninja cat. Yep, the Ninja cat.
Yes, and it is like where you try to be funny and you try to come up with ideas. We had some other themes in the past, and we got some feedback that might not be appropriate. And like,
people got offended.
Great feedback. and you try to be as sensitive as possible. But I like Ninja Cat. We got the unicorn thing as well, but this one is kind of cool with the HoloLens and the Windows flag.
Now you have me curious. I may have to go back in the history of the sample just to see what was there and got people
feel
offended.
free. I'm not afraid of it. So, but we change when we get feedback, so we'll do that. So the sample has both issuance and verification, right? If you now go to the website from Christos, you're like, wait a minute, that looks very similar. That's correct, because he did not build everything himself completely, right? No, I'm kidding. We see a lot of people, like, actually a lot of proof of concepts we do with our customers is a lot of just rescanning the sample and maybe add another database call, for example. It's not that complicated, honestly. So first of all, get the credential, and I have to be cool. Oh, I will share my phone as well at the same time, if I can.
Oh, I want to see that. How did you do it?
I feel like we need this, Christos. We need to ask. I
guess I messed up my demo already. Oh, there it is. I have to scan quickly before somebody else does it on the stream.
Well, leave this QR code alone, you folks.
Yes, I was fast enough. This is my setup. Enter a PIN code.
6469.
Then I add the card. I got my Verifiable Credential. There's a first name, last name.
Megan.
There's a common demo name. If you ever do an M365 demo tenant, demos.microsoft.com, you will see that name pop up. If I go back, I can now verify the credential. And that's actually an look. We are changing the QR code.
Yeah, you sent it. You sent it to me yesterday. I was curious to see whether that's been implemented. There you go.
I'm in the process of doing that. So. I can select my credential, this one, and you see the result. So this is just basically issuance and verification. So I've been Contoso and what's the other one again?
Woodgrove.
Woodgrove, right?
Woodgrove and the issuer and the verifier in the same sample.
Yes.
Typically, what people, but Chris said it as well, right? So not a lot of scenarios you will be both the issuer and the verifier. So if you want to be the verifier, you throw away the issuer code. If you want to be the issuer, you throw away the verifier code. That's why we split it up. If you feel like when you look at a sample, there seems to be double code, that's on purpose.
Yes.
And that's the apology. That's the challenge with the sample, right? So we try to be explaining how this stuff works without trying to do a lot of stuff about best practices, a lot of error handling, and all that stuff.
Oh, look at you apologizing already for.
No, but we got the feedback sometimes like, why aren't you guys doing this? And that's on purpose, right? So because it's trying to find a balance between almost like a reference implementation with 80% of the code is error handling and all that kind of, and exception handling and the edge cases.
Yes.
But the sample is about helping folks to understand how the API works. So that's what we try to balance out.
I agree.
So
I was just messing with you, and I wanted to blame it all on Rohit because we agreed before the show that if there are any issues or any questions, it's all Rohit's fault.
And by the way, I have to give the credits if the sample is working great. Christos, who was supposed to be in this stream, but he had other things to do.
I'm not overacting. You're creating some really
Christos. Sorry, I will
existential
not give credits
issues.
To Christos. No credits for you, man. Chris did a lot of the work. So we got .NET, Node, Python, and Java samples right now.
Where's my Ruby sample?
Let us know if you need it. In the end, it's a REST API call and a bunch of HTML and JavaScript. So I don't think people will find it hard to implement this.
Yes. Do you want to maybe show how the components of the APIs work? Like what happens first, what happens second for the issuance, and then let's also talk about the verification because it's like a process that you need to be aware of. And there's also a listener.
I don't know if this is going to help or not, but this is the
diagram.
The follow diagram on actually what we just saw during issuance. So think about step one is I'm as an issuing website, that's the sample, is calling our API. The API authenticates through client credentials we'll talk about that in a bit. And what the API does is tells you, like, I want this verifiable credential being issued. And by the way, here's the information about that verifiable credential. And we call that a credential URL. And you can specify a payload, for example, first name, last name. So that's step one. And that's calling the verifiable credential request API. What we do return is a URL to that request, because the request is quite big. It's a job, but it's a very big request. It doesn't fit in the QR code. So the QR code contains a URL. So when Authenticator scans this in step 3, it downloads that request, and we immediately delete that request from our server. So that request is hosted on our server. That's why I said, like, oh, quickly scan before somebody else does it, because it's a one-time download. And what our service does, we give you callbacks when something happens, so you can update your UI. So when I scan the QR code, Authenticator is actually here scanning it like step 4. I download that issuance request, step 5, from our service.
Yep.
We give you a callback on the issuance website, so you can hide that QR code, because it's only usable once. So there's some traffic between the service and the issuance website, which is not on this chart. If I download the request, it actually instructs the wallet what to do. And I'll show you what's inside of the request in a bit. So again, we call the API, we get a URL back where you can download the issuance request. That's what the holder of the wallet does. In that issuance request is also a credential URI. That's where you define how the card looks like, what claims you want to collect, the logo, the color, things like that. It depends a bit on the credential. So for example, in this case, in the sample, we only use a payload already, so you don't have to do anything, but you can modify the contract, for example, to ask a user to self-attest some information, or maybe use another verifiable credential as input. You can ask the people the users to log in to an ODC endpoint. So there's different things you can do inside of the contract, which gives the wallet the instructions to fulfill all the requirements. When all that is done, it talks back to our issuance service with all the information. We'll do the checks if everything is correct. We map information from that payload back to the right claims inside of the verifiable credential. You as a developer can design, I want the first name, last name. This is where the information is coming from. In our case, it's coming from this payload. We call it an ID token hint. But maybe you want the email address from another verifiable credential, or your age, for example. So it depends a bit on how you structure that credential. We will map all that stuff in the right place and then send back a signed verifiable credential to the wallet. This is how the flow works.
Nice.
So to explain, I think just to have an idea of how the API works, probably Postman is the easiest, and I can zoom in more if you want to.
Sure.
Postman actually does support Zoom, which is nice.
It does support Zoom across the board, which is great.
There is an advantage of Electron apps. So VS Code is the same, right? So we have a link to all the documentation, the samples. It includes the Postman collection as well. And there's 2 API calls, right? Issuance and present is like verification. So that's what we have here. First thing you need to do is you have to set up your environment with a bunch of variables, right? You have a client ID, a client secret, tenant ID, and your DID. This is what you retrieve from your verifiable credential blade in the portal. We do need a app registration, which has permission to call the API with a client secret. Of course, if you deploy this, you will use managed identities, right?
Or a certificate, please.
Or certificate.
This is mainly for demoing stuff, but you can use managed identity. I went down the route of using Key Vault to store that information securely. So like the code can do either certificate or a Key Vault secret, or you can hard code that. So if you go to our sample later on, you can see how this is set up. But Matthijs is right. If you are running in production, managed identity is the easiest and safest way to access resources.
Yeah, and the reason it's an app permission is that you cannot do these API calls on behalf of the user, right? The user might not even be known, so you cannot ask the user to sign in and call our request API. So it has to be an app permission. So this is the environment I'm going to use. which I have set up here, right? The environment. And the first thing you do is, well, get yourself a new access token. And I'm going to use this access token. And now I can call my APIs. Let's start with, oh man, it's just get really small to show what's happening here.
You can hide the side panel if you want. That one, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then I can't just make this one. So the API calls our, like it's an, we are a preview, right? It's a tenant ID, Verifiable Credentials request. And we're using a payload to instruct our APIs what to do. So I want a QR code returned. I'm going to specify the callback. Remember I said, like, when we say, well, the QR code was scanned, something is issued, we give you a callback. That's what you specify here. And you can protect the callback with an API key. We're going to say, well, for which DIT is this? We have one DIT in our system right now if you set up our environment, but you can imagine in the future you might have several ones.
Yep.
There's a client name, and then we're going to instruct, okay, I want to issue a verifiable credential expert verifiable credential, and the credential URI is this one. And if I open this one in another browser, this is what is returned if you download this, and I can zoom in a little bit more. So it tells you the title of the card, issued by, that's what you show on the left bottom screen, the background color, the logo, that's the little ninja cat. But also important, which claims I want to store. Remember, like Megan Bowen was in the Verifiable Credential, was stored in the Verifiable Credential, that's coming from this one.
Okay.
And this is totally configurable, right? You can add age, address, any metadata that you want to collect as part of the Verifiable Credential.
Exactly. So here's what you want to store inside of the Verifiable Credential. And these are the instructions how to get that information. In this case, we are using a self-issue. That means that the payload we provide through the API, but you can configure another Verifiable Credential, self-attested. If you don't want to use the payload, you can use for an ID token. You can sign into B2C or AED, for example, and map first name or like a family name, given name towards that claim here. I can show you the rules file in a minute. This is literally the contract or the credential URL which the wallet will use to figure out what the user has to do. In our case, they only have to do accept, which is nice, since there's no user input necessary, which is a nice user experience. Scan, accept, done. But this is what is part of that payload. We'll go back to Postman. We can protect with a PIN. There's also something in a sample I did. The PIN code is 4, but I did on purpose made the value longer. The reason being is that if people forget to change the code or they remove something, the request will fail because the length and the value are not the same. Yeah. I just try to help people prevent some kind of mistakes. I don't want people to issue credentials with the hard-coded PIN code, for example.
Yeah.
Yes, please don't.
Right.
And this is where you have to try to do the trade-off, right? How secure does it has to be, knowing that people will copy-paste a lot of code as well, or not do it at all. And here's the payload, the claims first name, last name. If I execute this, if I send this post request, that is the return is here. You can see there's a request ID, and this is the URL which we typically put inside of the QR code.
Okay.
Right.
If I'm on mobile, I just do a redirect, right? It's a deep link. If I'm on desktop, yes, I feel seeing, right? Aren't we all copy pasting code? And just,
right.
And a good developer just knows which code to copy paste. And
I don't copy paste
everything
anymore.
until it works.
I use Copilot. Just writes the code for me.
Oh yes, I still don't have access to that one, so I still have skills. There's an expiration of this request. We can return the QR code. In our samples, we don't, because we actually create a QR code ourselves with a little JavaScript library. But what's nice about this is that Postman can actually visualize that QR code. And I could now scan this request. But for example, if I just download this request, this is what Authenticator is downloading.
I see
if
a
you scan
token.
that QR code. And it's a big job. There's a way for me to single click and select all. No.
Can you open this in JWT.ms?
Yep, that's what I'm doing next.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
It will render properly. So it has a proper JWT structure, right? Header, body, and
It should be, and if not,
keys.
we have a bug.
Let's find live. Oh my God, look at that. Look at that. Look at that beauty. There is a lot.
I don't know about you, but I start recognizing JOTs because they all start with these few letters, right?
EY, yeah, I know. It's if JP was here, he could probably recite the all the characters in the JWT token.
Well, I'm not that bad, but you can see like it's an ID token since we are using OIDC PSYOP. It's a client ID. The scopes are just something you might recognize if you have done some OAuth or OIDC stuff before.
Okay.
There's some information about what kind of schema. Well, it's a verifiable credential. Here's the manifest, which the wallet will download. I know it's an issuance request because there's a create prompt here. That's like, okay, I want to create something. If you start verifying, you will see that that's missing. Who is the issuer with the DIT? So what the wallet will do, it will actually resolve this DIT, and we can do that in a bit, and try to verify the domain so you actually know it's coming from a legit source. You saw the security warning on my device. That's because, well, I'm running into a bug, but my setup is not done correctly. That's why it can't verify it. So you're like, well, are you sure you want to continue? It's like almost like Edge warning you about maybe you're not on the right side, that you should go somewhere else to do your thing, right? The state, blah, blah. The pin with the hash, we can use that pin to verify later. And here's the ID token hint. And this contains another job. Well, it's bigger than I was expecting. Go to JOT.ms.
So, Code with Sean says, fun fact, storing the JWT in uppercase causes problems. Do I even want to know how you came to this conclusion and why you were trying to do that? Please don't.
Probably not. Probably not. It probably involves a lot of headaches. You
should encrypt it with ROT32 and then base 64 this before you store it into your SQL server. How about that?
Right, so another job inside the ID token. I'm just going to ignore this. Everybody ignore.
ROT13 is more secure, says Phil Snubble. I have to disagree. 32 is more characters than 13. I don't know what you're talking about. Is it?
So this is the payload, which is first name, last name. You can see it here. And this payload is actually signed as well. So this ID token hint has to be validated to make sure it's coming from the right issuer. I could, in theory, actually use this ID token hint and send it to another organization, more advanced scenario, but it is here, right? So the payload is inside of this issuance request. So when Authenticator is done collecting all the information, sends it to our endpoint. It's called our issuance service. That will return an unsigned verifiable credential. But this is what in that initial Postman request I generate.
Okay.
What was the JIT claim there in the token? There was a property in the, just out of curiosity, on my.
This one.
Yeah, the JTI.
Well,
it's okay. It's okay that we don't know. We can find out. JTI.
Yeah, I might not.
And that must be specific to.
Let's see. There's an
maybe
explanation.
It's specific to our service.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a unique identifier of this job. I don't know where we are using this for. I'm not this kind of. We can discuss if it's nice that an API hides all the complexity of the protocols. So I think we have having this debate in the past as well when I was trying to do Christos' job. Is I believe that for most developers, protocols should not be that important because once you start understanding the protocols, people tend to start doing things themselves.
Write their own libraries.
They're not going to do a good job because there's a lot of security issues you might run into without even you knowing. You can get it to work. Look, it takes you 2 GET requests to get an access token, right? But you might set up yourself for security issues.
Yeah.
So what I like about APIs is where they hide away all the protocol-y stuff, especially since these protocols are actually evolving still. So for example, we are implementing a standard called presentation exchange. That's the language you can use to ask for specific verifiable credentials. Give me a verifiable credential where you can share your email address. I want a verifiable credential from this issuer or this issuer, but only of these two types. We can do more complex queries if you want to. But that protocol change is happening between the wallet and our services. The API will stay the same. So I kind of like APIs because it takes away the protocol stuff. But that means like, well, somebody asks you all these protocol questions, like, I don't know. It just works, right? So
we do have a good question from Gedoff. He says, if someone gets hold of the JWT, can they effectively use that to impersonate the original holder? Or is there a token binding that takes place for verifiable credentials?
So if they get a hold of the verifiable credential, which is like the last one you get returned after you're done, and people might intercept that one, you cannot impersonate the user because it's issued to a certain subject, and the subject is a DIT. And you don't own the private key for that DIT. So if you want to present, so if you think about what happens if I present a verifiable credential to a relying party, it's actually encapsulated again in another JOT. So the VC signed by the issuer is encapsulated in a verifiable presentation, we call it. And it could have multiple verifiable credentials, right? You don't have to ask for just one.
Yeah.
That verifiable presentation is signed by the user. So the issuer of that VP will be the DIT of the user, will be signed. That together is presented to the relying party. What the relying party does, first of all, okay, I got this VP, find this user. Could be the fake user. That still checks out, right? The DIT and the signature correct. But the subject of the VC is different. And that's like, well, wait a minute. Somebody else is trying to present this VC. And Crystals cannot present my VC because it doesn't have access to my private key. So you can try to fake it. So either the signature is incorrect while you pretend to be that subject, or the signature is correct but is from a different subject. So that's how we can prevent people stealing your verifiable credentials. Another thing we do is preventing replay is by using nonsense.
Okay.
Not nonsense.
And it's part of the request as well, so you can add it in the code.
Yeah, and this is all based on, like, this is what the standards try to help you with, right? OEDC, SIOP V1 and V2, to help you prevent these kind of things. Again, another reason for you to, unless you sign up for this work and you like doing this, like I said, there's always a few who care about these implementation details, and they'll sign up for those lists and make sure they're always up to date on the latest and the greatest security issues and evolvements. Folks will typically don't care. I always like say security for developers is like spinach. You know it's good for you, but nobody really likes it. You just want to get it to work, right? That's what it typically is. I know there's exceptions, but that's what we've seen so far for most developers.
That's nice that the verifiable credential comes with that, because for normal JWTs, we are working towards token binding to make it more secure, especially for things like single page apps and stuff like that. So security out of the box for verifiable credentials, which is great.
And what I said, this we have my colleague Christina is actively working on OIDC SIOP. We want to be able to authenticate with these things as well in the right proper way. And if it's standards based, anybody can use it. I can use a verifiable credential from somebody else. So interop is going to be really important in this market. And we just happen to build the tools like the management plane to help you manage your DIT and your private key, the APIs to create those requests, the SDK to help you build your own wallet if you want to, and the wallet itself, obviously, in Authenticator. So Microsoft just tries to help you as a developer to build these kind of decentralized solutions. All right, so this was issuance. Let's go to present. Again, you can choose to get a QR code, which is useful for Postman. In my sample, we created in JavaScript, so I have this one on false. The callback you can configure again. Again, it's about your DIT. There's a client name that shows up in the wallet, in the receipts as well. Whenever you use a verifiable credential, we collect that information. And so like you have a history wherever you use that verifiable credential, which is kind of nice. Receipt is to help you troubleshoot. That will return the complete tokens if you want so we don't have to use Fiddler to figure out what's going on.
Nice.
And then you can ask for a specific type with the purpose and accepted issuers. So for example, I want a Verifiable Credential expert, Verifiable Credential, but only from one of these issuers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you know what? I don't care. I like everybody, right? So you can ask me for just a Verifiable Credential expert, and I'm okay with everybody.
Right.
And as you can see, this is an array. So I could ask for multiple credentials if I want to.
Right.
I just do a comma, I guess here, comma.
For multiple credentials for multiple accepted
Interesting.
issuers, right?
Yeah. Think about, I want you to prove that you work at a certain company and that you are certified for Power BI. That's when I give you access to our Power BI dashboard.
Interesting.
Think about these kind of things.
Very nice.
And what I like about conceptually about Verifiable Credentials is you can do this without setting up federation. So you know how hard it is to, well, hard, it is hard. It's not that hard, but
B2B.
set up federation with a single company, it's fine. But what if you have to do 1,200 companies?
Yes.
Yeah.
So take NHS as an example. That's a POC we did where a doctor has to be onboarded, especially during COVID when they were going between hospitals.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're all separate companies with their own IT infrastructure. Might be similar, but they're their own systems. And now a doctor has to move from one hospital to another. So what we issued was a workplace credential, a proof that they actually are licensed to practice. They're not Dr. Phil. They actually have
She's not a real doctor.
medicine diploma, and those proofs can be used to onboard on a new system in a few minutes instead of weeks.
Right.
Interesting.
Without setting
Very
up
nice.
federation. And that's a reference case we actually published on our website. So again, it's not that complicated. A nice little trick is if you look at the Verifiable Credential, the type is actually an array. You can issue a Verifiable Credential expert and a expert and a Ninja Cat expert type at the same time. See this in like I don't know, maybe it's a hierarchical schema, right?
Yep.
Every Verifiable Credential will actually have a Verifiable Credential type. So if you ever want to troubleshoot any of your cards in your wallet and you don't know, you're not sure which one is which. So let me, where's my wallet? So I got a bunch of cards, but I don't know exactly what the other ones are.
Yeah.
If I would remove this, because I don't know who the issuer is, let me see if this works. Let's just try it on the fly, right?
Okay.
I should have a response here. Oh. How do I get this response up?
Yeah, somewhere down there hidden, right? You might want to, there you go.
Okay.
You might want to
visualize. I'm going to scan the QR code quickly before you do it.
Don't steal his QR code.
You know somebody's going to try.
And now you should look, which one do you want to use? Because I have multiple ones which can fulfill this request.
Right.
And I can select all of them now.
Ooh,
Very cool.
So this is a nice little trick. If you want to see, well, I got all those cards. Which one is doing what? So it's a very easy trick. If I go back to the request, oh, this is the wrong one.
Too many windows.
I go back to the request. Oh, it's not the right one. The present and the and I do this one again.
Scan it.
And scan it.
Just as a heads up, we have something like 5 to 7 minutes left.
All right. Oop. Oh, you want to see it on the side, right? What I'm doing here.
Bolt is saying Dr. Phil is only a dentist, and then I said shots fired. And now we have a new type of stream sniping coming your way.
QR code stealing. Let's see.
QR code stealing, yeah. Stay
I don't
away
know.
from our QR
It doesn't
code.
want to scan this
we
one.
do
What
have
the
a
heck?
fantastic QR code.
Yeah, but you know, like this is a little trick how it works. So back to the sample then, since we are running out of time. I can stop this one now. So first we have a page, the Verifier page, for example. And what it does is like when you click on the button, it calls we have a sign in click, right? So it actually calls an API to create a request, and then the result will be shown as a QR code on the screen. This is the new library I'm trying to use to make it fancy. But that's it. And if you're on mobile, it will create a deep link and it will redirect to Authenticator immediately. So this sample, and I think your website with the QR code on the screen should work on mobile as well, right? So
yes,
you don't have to do it on desktop.
So I'm putting
And
a
then
link
what
to
we
the
do,
samples on the chat. So if people want to go and see what Matthijs is running just now, because I think you've taken it straight out of the samples, right? If I'm
correct.
correct?
Yep.
So these are the official samples. And if you want to look at our sample, you can go to our GitHub repo, and we have a VC website that you can look at how our VC issuance works and verification. And make sure to scan the QR code to get your verifiable credential as well, since you watch the show.
so again, the JavaScript, when I click on that button, just calls an API. I'll show you in a minute. And the response is going to be used to create a QR code. And then the application is actually very dumb. The only thing it does right now is something changed? Did something change? Did something change, right? So we check on the back end on our website, did something change? So we have a little state engine in our web app, which like when the QR code is scanned, I update the state. When something is presented, I update the state. So this JavaScript just like is a polling mechanism. You could use a WebSocket to do it real time if you want to.
Signal R, but something like that.
The model is like, okay, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? And I remove the QR code, or I present the results. Like the request is retrieved, hide the QR code, or it's actually verified and I show the results. That's the simple model from this page. And the interval is 1500 milliseconds. So if you want this locally and use like ngrok, you might time out with a free version because you do command request, increase this one. But that's the gist of the sample on the client. If I go to the server, when I click on that button, the first thing I call is the presentation request. What we do is I have a payload, and I fill in the blanks of the payload. The API key, the callback, the type is hard-coded here, but the accepted issuers can be myself. The manifest if I'm issuing. So the code is not doing nothing more than just filling in that template. So I download the file, I create a state which I need to use to map like callbacks, right? Which client needs to be updated, etc. I can set the callback URL. I do it automatically. So if you're on localhost, it's not working because you have to use something our service can access. So for example, when you use ngrok, the URL will be different all the time. So we pick it up and put it in the payload for you, so you don't have to change it all the time yourself. Then just create an access token with MSAL, client credentials, creating like a client ID and a secret. We get an access token. I actually cached the access token. That took me forever to find how to do it, by the way, to store client credential access tokens. But it's in a sample, so I try to be a good citizen. I don't want Christos to hunt me down and tell me I did the wrong thing. But this should be managed identities if you deploy it in production.
Yes, that's right.
Ideally.
That's right.
And then I just call our endpoint with the bearer token, access token, with a payload. And then the response is put in state, in like a little in-memory database, or it could be Redis or whatever you use. And then the other API can be like, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? So I'm just calling the API, and that URL is returned to the UI and showing a QR code. That's what it is. So the state not scanned, and the request is put in here, the expiry, and the data is put in the cache data is put into the database. Then I have here like, are you done yet? This is code. Are you done yet? Are you done yet? To update the status. And the callbacks is the most interesting one. So our service will call this API because that's what I put in the callback information. And either it's the request is retrieved, so I update our little state, or the presentation was actually verified, and I can like the first name, last name. In my case, this is something you would change in your case. I just retrieve that information from that callback, put it in that little in-memory database, and then the API like, okay, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Thing will capture that state and show it in the UI. That's
So
very
the way that it
quickly how
works
the
is
sample works.
we send an issue request to begin with. Then we have something polling for a response. The response comes back. Then we update the UI accordingly. And then for the verification, it's exactly the same thing. We send the verification request out, and then we're polling for a response. And then once that response comes back, we update the UI accordingly. And therefore,
issuance, I do some pin stuff, right? Because I make sure the
Yes.
pin is random. I show that typically you send that pin on a different channel, but we show it on the screen now, and I actually update their first name, last name. So
I think
since
most
we do
of
it
the
hard code, I
code-
think your sample actually asks you the first name, last name, and you pick it up
It does.
dynamically. I did it
Yes.
hard coded, but here would be your database call and get some
Yeah.
information about
Yes.
this user, like your
Correct.
diploma information or your certification you have done or your driver's license or whatever verifiable credential you want to create. This is where you create that little payload.
Yep.
And then call that payload, put it in the API body, and then do the same thing. So conceptually, it's a freaking REST API, hard it can be, right?
It
so,
is.
And then the
to
website
be
is
honest,
just a little state engine which shows you the QR code, hides the QR code, and shows an error when things go wrong, etc.
somebody says, I would love to see all this JavaScript in a Blazor and C#. I feel that it's much better developer environment. You're absolutely right. You, in fact, join our hackathon. It's 45.show/DID/hackathon. And you build it with Blazor, and we would love to host your sample in our samples. So everyone's welcome to use whatever technology works. I think we went with a basic sample here just to, like, a lot of things are hard coded because we want to show people how the API works. And to be honest, I feel that 80% of this code is mainly dealing with the presentation of the process rather than actually doing the API calls. The API calls are a lot simpler when it comes to calling and verifying. So from my perspective, I think it took more time to configure the UI or what have you. Need to learn more about this. Just randomly found this via email link and I jumped on. Well, Code Putter, this will be available on YouTube. We also have the previous introduction to Decentralized Identity video, which you can find in the link above. I will put a nice pop-up link to the previous video. It's all on our YouTube video, and then all the documentation and everything that you need to know about the API and the samples will be in the links below on the video. So thanks for joining, everyone. We're at the time. Sorry.
I was say real quick, don't forget, join and you win swag. You forgot the cool part.
Yeah, you win free stuff.
Join the hackathon. You win free stuff. So definitely join.
I'm just going to put the link again for the hackathon for people that maybe just joined. And don't forget to scan the QR code that we have on this side.
Yes.
I haven't done that.
And that will, everybody needs swag. And it's open to everyone, wherever you are. I think there are some small restrictions, but overall, we're great. So without any further ado, we're going to kick off the raid to one of our friends. I have no idea who's live right now. So let's see who's streaming at the moment. We got our friend Cesar Fritz. We also have InstaFluff. So let's go to InstaFluff because I haven't been there in a while. All of you stay safe. Thank you for joining us. Check our YouTube. Tune in next week or next Tuesday to see us actually setting up our infrastructure to get you ready for the hackathon.
Yes.
And then, stay safe, everyone. Thank you very much. Right.
Thanks,
everyone. Take care.
So raid starting on one channel. Let's do the raid on the other channel as well. And that should take a couple of seconds right now and right now. And 9 seconds to raid. That's insane. Well, you guys did great. Thanks everyone for joining us. And I'm going to end the stream now.